Yes, you read the title of this video correctly. I'm talking about Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts again, even though I just talked about it very recently. Yeah, I can do that. I can talk about a thing that's not Steven Universe more than once on this channel in a reasonable time frame. Never done it before, but I can. That said, I want to get a couple of things out of the way right at the beginning of this review. There's going to be a few minor spoilers in this. I'm going to keep them as minor as possible, and I'm going to keep them to as small a number as possible, because this is still a thing that I'm trying to get people to watch who haven't watched it yet. I want to avoid spoilers when I can. But in order for me to say what I need to say to, I hope, convince more of you to watch this show, I need to spoil a couple of things. So there's going to be a couple of spoilers. They're not going to be too terribly bad, though, I don't think. At least I hope not. And because I did talk about this fairly recently, I am going to direct you to that previous video. Right now, it's a My 2 Cents video on just the first 3 episodes of the show. Because, pretty frankly, my first impressions of the show were pretty much right on the money. Like, I don't feel like I really need to talk much about the animation or the basic premise or the fantastic music in this show, because I already talked about those things in that video, and the things that I say in that video still hold up. So I'm going to use that brief callback to the My 2 Cents on this fantastic show to allude to the fact that all of those things are amazing, and then I'm just gonna move right on. Though I will say on the subject of music that I got the impression from those first 3 episodes that an ongoing theme in the show is going to be finding understanding through music, i.e. bridges would be built between the heroes and various groups through music, and the characters at certain points would come to understand each other and themselves better through music. And I turned out to be right on the money about that. Like, I can't recall if I said that in that My 2 Cents video, but it's an impression that I got, and it was right on the money. And it never really feels repetitive either, because, like, Kipo realizes at some point that this is a thing that she can do, that she can get through to people by speaking their language, and music is a powerful language used on the surface, not literally. Like, people don't speak to each other through music, but various groups seem to be consolidated around different kinds of music. Like, there's a group of snakes, for example, who don't like the Timber Cats, the group of bipedal cat monsters that Kipo and her friends befriend in episode 3, but Kipo is able to earn their trust through music, much like she did the Timber Cats, and even kind of create a bit of a tentative trust between the two groups when there was literally nothing like that before. Is very cool. And the constant use of music to serve the story not only allows them to set the stage very quickly in certain situations, like the Mod Frogs from early in the season come back later on, and there's this, I think it was supposed to be like a lightning bug or something, that kind of becomes associated with them early on, and has a very distinct tone that it emits, like a very distinct musical beat that it emits. And so whenever it shows up, the show feels like the Mod Frogs again. It sets a tone very, very quickly. That kind of thing happens a lot. It's very cool. I also really like that the show kept to the pattern established by the early episodes of being mostly serialized. Like, there's an underlying story, and at least as far as I can recall, it's brought up in every single episode, but each episode feels like its own self-contained story with that as a backdrop. Like, I drew a comparison between the plot structure of Kipo and the plot structure of the books in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series in a recent video, and I hold to that. I could see someone who plotted out this show going to work on the reboot of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the live-action version of it that I talked about in that Percy Jackson video. I could see them going to work on that and doing a fantastic job of translating the story of those books to the screen. So I guess the gist of this first part of the review is that all of the good things that I had to say about the show in that My 2 Cents remain true through the rest of the season. So if you still weren't sold on the show from my assessment of just those first 3 episodes, but it seemed interesting, you know that it's worth it to get into this show. We already know there's going to be more seasons. I'm really excited for him. It's very, very good. Now, getting into spoilers. This is a Fantasy Quest style show, and so it shouldn't be any surprise to anyone that Kipo is something of a Chosen One type. Like, not really, but there is something special about her that makes her different. Like, not in any way that undermines all of the stuff that she's done throughout this first season, like all of the emotional connections that she's made, but she does have special abilities and some secret element to her past. And I'm not going to get into specifically what it is, but that is a thing. And one of the coolest sequences in the entire show is another musical sequence where instead of like creating understanding between others or about one of the other characters, a song is used to sort of highlight and allude to what Kipo might be, and it's one of the coolest sequences of the entire show. It's towards the end of the season. Might even be in the last episode of the season. I can't 100% remember. Oops. So that is a thing to keep in mind, and it's really cool. And I have some ideas about where it's going, to the point that if I get the time to watch through the season again, I might do a theory on it. Like, I want to go back through and pick up pieces of evidence and stuff, but if I can, I might do a theory on it, because it's super interesting. I'm really looking forward to seeing where it goes. It's also worth noting that the storyline of this first season, trying to reunite Kipo with her people, is essentially solved this season. Like, it's not something that's going to drag on past the finale of this particular season. Like, things get complicated again at the end, and I guess they kind of have to do that a second time come next season, sort of, just in a really, really different way. But Kipo does get quote-unquote home by the end of this season. So if you were worried that they were going to draw that plot out, there's nothing to worry about. And also, she gets home by traversing a field full of giant playing doggos, including a giant corgi. I'm going to say that again. I want this to carry the weight that it deserves. This show has a giant corgi in it. Like, that alone should be enough to get you to go watch it. If it's not, I'm sorry, there's probably just not any hope for you. But probably my favorite thing about this entire season, even more so than a giant corgi, which is saying something, is probably where they took the character of Benson. And I know it's going to seem like I'm gushing over this, making a bigger deal of it than I should be, but it's so freaking cool. And this is the biggest spoiler of this entire review, so if you want to check out now, that's perfectly fine. There's not a ton left in the video anyway at this point. But Benson is revealed to be gay, and that in and of itself isn't all that super special anymore. Let's be clear, but the way they handle the reveal, it really got me, man. Like, I don't remember being this excited about a reveal of a character detail in a long time. It's during an episode when Benson is trying to do something special for Kipo to show her that not everything about the surface is constantly dangerous, that there are like genuinely good, peaceful places up here. And by doing that nice thing for her, she starts to think that he's interested in her, and she's receptive to it. But when he catches on to what she thinks is going on, he just says it. He says, "I'm gay." Like, it's nothing. And what's so special about it ends up being that there's nothing special about it. It's just a part of who he is. The characters acknowledge it. They're a little flustered by the misunderstanding, but then they move on. And again, I'm going to come off like I'm making a bigger deal out of this than I should be, but when do you see that in anything? This is what we should be striving for in terms of representation. Like, explicit representation where attention is drawn to the character's traits is also important, especially when someone is trying to make some sort of statement by it. But this is what we should be striving for in terms of representation, is just the casual, normalized existence of LGBT plus people. And including a character like that who is represented in that way in a show meant for kids, that is a fantastic show that kids are going to remember, that's very important. And so I was very happy when I saw that, and I'm still very happy about it. I'm sure you couldn't tell even slightly. Like, I'm trying right now to think of anything that I didn't like about this show. I guess the way that we are provided with our, like, primary theory up to this point as to what exactly Kipo is. The episode in which it was revealed and the way in which it was revealed in that episode, I didn't really like that too much, because it makes it seem like it was something that Kipo's mind made up all on its own without any evidence. You'll see what I'm talking about when you watch the show. And frankly, I didn't really like the one-off villain of that episode either. Like, there wasn't anything really wrong with him, he just didn't really interest me as a concept. But one weak episode doesn't undo all of the fantastic things that this show does. And there were strong elements to that episode anyway. It wasn't the strongest episode of the series. I didn't particularly like it, I kind of checked out for part of it. But it wasn't, like, awful or anything, and the rest of the show is just... it's so good. It's so good that I didn't even consider docking points from it because of that one episode that I didn't like as much. It's amazing. It's an amazing show. Go watch it. Like, that's my final word on the subject. Go watch it. Even if you have already watched it, go watch it again. I genuinely think, like, I haven't watched it again myself. I already mentioned that. But I genuinely think there's probably stuff in the background of the show that makes it worth a second viewing. So, go forth and view it a second time. Or a third. Let's make it absolutely clear that people are watching this show and really liking it, shall we? I didn't even talk about the villain of the show. The villain of the show is very interesting too, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with him. There you go. As per usual, I'd like to know, what did you guys think of the first season of Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts, if you have seen it? On a scale of infinity to infinity, how excited were you to see that giant corgi? Now let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys